In 1986, the Transformers were arguably at their financial and commercial peak with a successful toy line and cartoon series. So, what was next for these robots in disguise? Well, more toys, of course, and to help sell them to all the kiddies, a full-length animated movie. And while at the time the movie bombed, it has since achieved fan favorite cult status, and to be fair, it did manage to accomplish one of its main goals at least, which was to get rid of the old guys and bring in the new. I think it's pretty safe to say that when it comes to life, one truth we can all accept is that change is inevitable, especially when it comes to a toy line that is best known for transforming. After finishing off a second successful year of Transformers toys, Hasbro felt that for the third year, a big change was due. And that change came in the form of discontinuing most of the characters introduced in the first year of the line in order to make room for a whole lot more toys for us to buy. And so, looking at the new 1986 Transformers catalog, while there most likely was that one kid or two who noticed the non-presence of Huffer or Skywarp, I'm pretty sure everybody noticed the absence of two more prominent characters, the Autobot and Decepticon leaders, Optimus Prime and Megatron. And in their place, a couple of city commanders, Ultra Magnus for the Autobots and Galvatron for the Decepticons. Now Magnus I was pretty familiar with as his toy was originally released in the Japanese Diaclone line with different colors. But Galvatron, now he was new, and to be honest, as far as first impressions went, I was far from impressed, and it never crossed my 10-year-old brain that this guy was supposed to be the new Decepticon leader. See, at this point, despite their absence in the new catalog, I don't think any kid thought Hasbro was crazy enough to get rid of arguably the two most popular and recognizable Transformers, and that when the much anticipated full-length movie rolled around, they would both be front and center leading their respective sides into battle. Well, we all know what happened. Prime and Megs were there, and they had their epic fight. And then they were gone. Prime had his emotional but traumatic deathbed scene that sent kids off crying, pissing off parents, and apparently saving a certain real American hero's life. And Megatron? Well, he got an upgrade. After his fight with Prime, a really effed up Megatron is dumped out into space by Starscream, where he drifts off aimlessly around until he is found by the new major baddie of the movie, the Chaos Bringer and Planet Eater, Unicron, who upgrades Megatron into a new, more powerful form, Galvatron. And for this upgrade, Galvatron is given the mission to hunt down and destroy Unicron's one weakness, the Autobot Matrix of Leadership. And after a quick detour to render Starscream into ashes, Galvatron accomplishes his mission and takes the Matrix, but instead attempts to use it to enslave his own master. And for his troubles, Unicron simply swallows the dude, Matrix and all. And it's inside Unicron where Galvatron meets his new Autobot leader counterpart, Rodimus Prime, who makes quick work of Galvatron by hurling him out into space and defeats Unicron by unleashing the full power of the Matrix inside him. And that, in a nutshell, was our introduction to the new leader of the Decepticons, Galvatron. Anyway, post-movie, Galvatron continued to lead the Decepticons in the third season of the cartoon, with a twist. See, in the movie, Galvatron, voiced by the iconic Leonard Nimoy, was portrayed as a cold, calculating, and brutal individual. Ruthless, but composed with a clear sense of strategy and purpose. As reflective of his new head design that looked like a king's crown, Galvatron had a certain regal arrogance to him, fitting for a newly empowered leader. But in the post-movie cartoon, Galvatron, now voiced by the OG Megatron voice actor Frank Welker, was portrayed as wildly erratic and completely insane, prone to violent outbursts, paranoia, and irrational plans. But there are reasons for this. See, at the end of the movie, after getting thrown out into space by Rodimus, Galvatron ends up crashing into the planet Thrall, or to be more specific, a plasma lava pit on the planet Thrall, and he remained trapped there until he was recovered by his loyal soldiers Cyclonus and Scourge. And while he survived, he basically had all the logical Nimoys wiped out from his brain, leaving one hell of a messed up dude. I mean, if you were trapped in a lava pit for an extended period of time and actually managed to survive, wouldn't that majorly F you up too? Anyway, I mentioned this because it's this specific character trait that pretty much defines who Galvatron is in almost every other iteration of the new Decepticon leader. Unlike Megatron, who was usually driven by a glorious, albeit misguided purpose, Galvatron was basically batshit crazy, and this is illustrated best in the cartoon episode Web World, wherein his most trusted lieutenant, Cyclonus, tricks Galvatron into going into therapy. As the story goes, Galvatron is committed, against his will, to the planet Torculon, a sort of medical asylum. And after several unsuccessful attempts to cure him, the Torculon therapists decide it's best to just basically wipe his mind clean by linking him up with the planet itself, which turns out to be some sort of supercomputer. But this ultimately turns out to be a bad idea, as Galvatron's madness ends up infecting, overwhelming, and defeating the planet itself. So yeah, the dude is that crazy. But as entertaining as Mad Galvatron was in the cartoons, I believe that Galvatron's true potential was fully realized and displayed in the comics. Most notably in the UK comics, wherein writer Simon Furman mixed in the new element of time travel to Galvatron's story from the 1986 movie. So apparently, after being created by Unicron, the ever-calculating Galvatron formulates a plan to free himself from his master's control, harnessing a time jump mechanism that is most likely powered by 1.21 gigawatts! Galvatron, along with Scourge and Cyclonus, travel back in time from the year 2006 to 1986, with the grand plan of building a massive space cannon and burying it unnoticed underneath the spot where the Autobots would one day construct Autobot City. The cannon is set to go off in 20 years, blasting up through the Autobot City and striking Unicron at a predetermined location, destroying the Planet Eater and the Autobots in one fell swoop. Talk about playing the long game. In the end though, Galvatron and company are defeated by the joint Autobot and Decepticon forces, including Autobots from the future, Cup, Blur, and Hot Rod, who had apparently been sent back in time by Unicron to stop Galvatron. Anyway, after this, Galvatron and time travel became a thing, with the future Decepticon leader repeatedly traveling through the time streams, being a thorn in both the present-day Autobot and Decepticon sides, and even at times teaming up with his past self, Megatron. Or was that a clone? Whatever. In any case, all this constant traveling finally caused a rift in the time stream, leading to a catastrophic time storm that ultimately destroys Galvatron. But not to be upstaged by the UK comics, the US Transformers comics had their own unique take on Galvatron. This time, a Decepticon from an alternate future timeline wherein he ruled a post-apocalyptic Earth, where the Decepticons had conquered the Americas. As was the norm, this Galvatron had descended into madness as well, displaying delusional behavior and talking to the corpse of Rodimus Prime, which he kept on display as a trophy. Anyway, this dude is unfortunately snatched up by the main continuity Unicron to be his herald and lead his attack against Cybertron. Naturally, this Galvatron is not happy with once again being forced into servitude, but instead of openly defying Unicron, decides to go the sneakier route and try and undermine him from within. So Galvatron secretly ventures to the core of Cybertron and successfully persuades the Transformer god Primus to unite all Transformers to resist Unicron. And when Unicron attacks, Galvatron, powered up by Cybertron's energy, takes on the Chaos Bringer by himself and gets casually swatted away. But despite his defeat, his symbolic gesture manages to rally the Transformers to unite, turning the tide of the battle. So, good job, Galvatron. In the end though, this Galvatron is defeated by the Autobot Fortress Maximus in a pretty savage fight. I mean, Galvatron was literally biting wires off Fort Max's shoulder, but is ultimately punched into a frozen lake where he sinks, never to be seen again. And that was that. At least for Marvel's take. Because apparently, years later, comic company IDW would come along and give yet another unique version of Galvatron. So unique that he was no longer an upgraded Megatron or the unwilling servant of Unicron, but his own character, separate from the OG Decepticon leader and servant of someone else. But we'll get to that a little later on. In the IDW universe, Galvatron is a brutal and ambitious Cybertronian warrior from the ancient past, long before the Autobot Decepticon War. So, millions of years ago, Galvatron, alongside his twin brother RC, yes, that RC. I'll place a link to that story in the description below. So, millions of years ago, Galvatron and RC were a couple of slave gladiators who served under various warring primes. Eventually, he comes into the service of Nova Prime and joins him on his mission to expand Cybertronian civilization across the galaxy. Galvatron is part of Nova Prime's ill-fated crew that sets off for a far-off region in space called the Benzuli Expanse, where they are pulled into a corrupt parallel dimension ominously called the Dead Universe, wherein they remain trapped for a very, very, very long time. In the Dead Universe, Nova Prime is corrupted further into Nemesis Prime, and Galvatron is transformed into his undead herald. Well, to be fair, the entire crew, which included Cyclonus, Scourge, this mad scientist dude named Jyaxus, another dude named Tailpipe, and is that Grimlock? Anyway, the whole crew were all corrupted into living dead, or sort of immortal beings that could apparently only survive for a limited time outside the Dead Universe. So naturally, they make their move in the present day with a new mission of merging the dead and living universes together. Unsurprisingly, Galvatron eventually betrays Nova Prime and he himself is defeated by Prime, who hurls him into a solar pool. Of course, being sort of immortal, Galvatron returns once again, this time powered by a fragment of the Dead Universe's energy, a sort of anti-matrix that he dubs the Heart of Darkness, and given purpose with a new mission to defeat a mysterious dark entity that he encountered in the Dead Universe called D-Void. Not the Void, D-Void. An unbelievably powerful mass of eyes and black tentacles turned huge convoluted demonic beast thing that seeks to devour the life of entire worlds in order to satiate its hunger. Fortunately though, it is unable to leave the Dead Universe without outside help, which he hopes to get from Galvatron, who races off with the Heart of Darkness to Cybertron in order to rally an army of Autobots and Decepticons to fight the emerging threat of D-Void. But apparently, this is what D-Void wanted, as the Heart of Darkness that Galvatron wielded was in fact an extension of D-Void, and him bringing it to Cybertron, essentially a dead planet itself, would cause it to transform it into an immense portal for D-Void to emerge from. Sneaky, sneaky. And in the climactic battle, despite creating a Deceptigod out of a merged and mind-controlled Decepticon army, D-Void is finally defeated by, surprise, surprise, Optimus Prime and the Matrix of Leadership. After the defeat of D-Void, Galvatron reinvents himself as a Cybertronian nationalist and militarist, representing ancient Cybertronian ideals, advocating for strength and expansion. So yeah, basically fills the void of Decepticon leadership after Megatron switches sides and becomes an Autobot. As the leader of a sizable faction of Decepticons, Galvatron emulates his former master Nova Prime's goals of restoring what he sees as Cybertron's rightful place as a galactic empire, and gets killed for it. Seeing Galvatron as selfishness incarnate, whose mere existence is a continued danger to Earth, to peace, and all Cybertronians, IDW Prime does his best impression of live-action movie Prime and blasts a defeated Galvatron point blank and then proceeds to rip off his head, finally ending him. And speaking of the live-action movies, a Galvatron does manage to show up in the fourth installment, The Age of Extinction. In the movie, a tech corporation called Kinetic Solutions Incorporated, or KSI for short, attempts to create their very own robots in disguise using an alien metal extracted from dead Transformers called Transformium. Yeah. Anyway, despite their best intentions to create their own savage killing machine, Optimus Prime, their Transformer mysteriously keeps overriding its programming and starts looking like another more silvery loser from the previous movies. I wonder why. I mean, I'm just guessing here, but could it be because they used Megatron's decapitated head as the base of their project? Apparently, despite getting an axe embedded into his skull and head and spine ripped off from his body in the last movie, this Megatron is only mostly dead, and what remains of his consciousness is slowly downloaded into and corrupts KSI's Transformer. And thus, Galvatron is born. I mean, you'd think if KSI really wanted to create a new Optimus, they would at least give him a more prime-sounding name and not something that literally rhymed with Megatron. Well, at least they got the truck alt mode part right. And speaking of getting things right, I do hope I can successfully convince those of you who haven't yet to help my channel out by giving it a sub. I know, they say subs don't really matter in today's YouTube landscape. But yeah, seeing my sub count grow still does help boost content creator morale, which I think is just as important in helping me tell more stories and making my channel grow. So if you're enjoying this video, or at least even getting mildly entertained by it, your likes, comments, shares, and most importantly, subs will be immensely appreciated. So thank you. Anyway, despite his shocking reveal that no one saw coming, Galvatron doesn't really do anything in the movie. I mean, yes, he fights Prime and he has his one memorable line, once again voiced by Frank Welker, wherein he answers Prime's accusation of having no soul with,
"That is why I have no fear."
like he literally has a hole in his chest. Oh, and he has really crazy eyes, and a visually cool but ultimately cop-out way of transforming, where he literally just breaks apart into a floating metal cloud and reforms into his alt mode. Hardly what I would define as a transformer, so yeah, let's just call this guy a reformer. Ultimately, nothing memorable. In the third act, Galvatron manages to survive getting his ass whooped by the Dinobots and lives to return in the next movie as Megatron. And that was all Mr. Bay wrote about his Galvatron. But that's not all I have written for Galvatron for my story, as we still have to go over the different Galvatron toys that have been released through the years, starting with the OG one in 1986. Like most of the new toys introduced that year, Galvatron's toy wasn't based on an older pre-existing Japanese Diaclone toy, but instead concept art by Filipino artist Floro Derry, done for the movie. Apparently, it was a really early concept design, as the toy sported a color deco that was obviously different from what we ended up seeing in the movie. However, that toy's more predominantly light gray look would be used in the early Marvel UK and US comics. But anyway, while he definitely had a strikingly unique, less earthy look to him, it was still the 80s, so in the end the toy was still a brick. At least his alt mode, that of a huge but mobile futuristic space cannon, which was more formidable than a handheld weapon, was more fitting for a Decepticon leader, or to be more precise, a Decepticon city commander. Like I mentioned in the start, Hasbro didn't outright market Galvatron as the new Decepticon leader, as I guess they wanted to keep that whole upgraded Megatron a surprise for the movie. Anyway, after all that, I actually never got this toy or handled him myself. I would have to wait over 2 decades later to finally get my hands on my very first Galvatron toy, and it would be quite the controversial one. Released in 2008, Universe Galvatron in my opinion looked really cool and menacing in both robot and tank mode, but ultimately was a majorly flawed toy. First off, he was small, like deluxe class small, and given his size, he felt really overly engineered. He also seemed to have extra articulated bits that seemed to hint at a third mode. In any case, it was later revealed that this Galvatron was indeed originally designed as a larger sized figure with a third walking tank mode, but all this was scrapped last minute to cut production costs. As a result, a lot of the tolerances were negatively affected by this abrupt change. In my fictional headcanon though, I'd like to think that this Galvatron time traveled from the present day, where current Transformer toy classes aren't necessarily defined solely by size, but more on accessories and parts count, back to 2008. So yeah, this deluxe Galvatron would most likely pass as a Voyager toy today. the bad tolerances can be explained as caused by the rigors of time travel. But seriously though, if this toy had been released just a few years later when oversized and improved knockoffs were a thing, this Galvatron design might have been more popular. In 2014, a third-party company, Unique Toys, tried to give us a more appropriately sized Galvatron in their Mania King. Now, I was extremely tempted to get this guy as he looked like a significant upgrade from the Universe version. But one major design flaw kept me from pulling the proverbial trigger: his gorilla arms. Seriously, this design choice was and continues to be a major peeve of mine. In hindsight though, my passing turned out to be a good thing as a more reasonably priced official alternative was just around the corner. A couple years later, Hasbro finally gave us a properly sized Galvatron that was a headmaster. Yup, Titan's Return Galvatron came packed in with a new little buddy, Nucleon, that transformed into his head. Now, if you could get past the whole headmaster thingy, which admittedly looked a bit wonky in execution, this Galvatron was a pretty decent plastic representation of the guy who actually had a passable third space fighter mode. Also, the Japanese version sported a slightly lighter paint deco and retooled headmaster that was now Megatron. Eventually though, we would finally get a back-to-basics, non-gimmicky leader-class Galvatron in 2021's Kingdom line, with misassembled shoulders. Apparently, the first run of this toy came with the shoulder joints assembled the wrong way, which made this Galvatron look rather long-armed and simian in appearance. The fix though, while rather involved and a bit scary, wasn't too difficult, provided you had the right tools. So for a time, I would think sales for plastic auto vehicle dismantling device pry tools for cars must have spiked up quite a bit. Seriously though, given how relatively cheap these tools were, they have been extremely handy transforming tools for me, given that spudgers really aren't a thing in my country. But back to Galvatron. While I do believe that Hasbro really should get their shit together and not sell us toys that we have to fix on our own out of the box, doing work on my Galvatron actually gave me a better appreciation for the toy. It's pretty much the definitive Galvatron for my Chug collection. For now. But as you well know, for most hardcore Transformers collectors, Chug is only half the story. On the Masterpiece front, we did get two pretty great options for Galvatron in DX9's Tyrant and Fans Toys' Sovereign, both released around 2016-17. And while I'm sure DX9's Tyrant has its fans, by default, I went with Fans Toys' Sovereign, who is, in my opinion, close to pure Galvatron perfection, had it not been for his rather visible arms in cannon mode. Oh, and unfortunately, mine got a really visible paint chip on his left shoulder. FML. Oh well, easily remedied on the display. Also worth mentioning was a lesser-known third-party company called Open and Play that took the Titan's Return Galvatron, upsized and improved it into another masterpiece-ish option called Big Cannon. And while this guy is decent and the appropriate size for a masterpiece transformer, it is definitely on a much lower level tier than both Tyrant and Sovereign. Looking to the future though, we have perennial Fans Toys competitor X-Transbots, who has also announced their upcoming Galvatron called Abaddon, which also looks pretty good. But in true Fans Toys fashion, not long after, they announced their improved Sovereign 2.0 with non-visible arms and cannon mode. As of this writing though, both have yet to see the light of day. And finally, not to be outdone, the original third-party Galvatron maker, Unique Toys, released their masterpiece Galvatron in 2021 called Nero. Wait, okay, so this is their take on a live-action Age of Extinction Galvatron. And whether you like this version or not, I don't think anyone can deny that this guy is an engineering and design marvel. I mean, given that previous mainline live-action Galvatron toys were basically glorified shell formers, the fact that Unique Toys took this soulless, convoluted mess of a robot and managed to transform it into a streamlined and sleek truck cab is nothing short of miraculous. And speaking of miraculous, I think it would be the perfect word to use when referring to this Decepticon, who despite being a bona fide traitorous prick, manages to miraculously survive time and time again after continuously proverbially poking the bear that is his leader, Megatron, the apparently immortal spark-bearing Starscream. If you want to know more about this Silver Snake, I've got his story over here. Or if you want other Transformer stories, you can check out this playlist over here. Either way, thanks for watching, and I hope you come back for more.